Welcome to Pathways to Greatness, the show where faith meets focus and potential becomes purpose. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, mental performance coach, speaker, and believer that greatness begins within. Each episode, we'll uncover the biblical principles, mindset strategies, and daily disciplines that help student athletes, parents, and leaders just like you walk boldly in their calling. Let's step onto the path that leads to true greatness, God's way. Hey, welcome back to Pathways to Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Forrester, and we have another solo episode today. And today is all about the dangers of wearing a mask, lessons from Galatians 2:11 through 14. So let me read that to get us started. So I'm going to read from the English Standard Version. So this is all about Paul opposes Peter. And this story is one that has always resonated with me, because it's a great example of how we need to correct others and then also how to stand in line with our own integrity and not wavering from that. So it's a double lesson here. So Paul opposes Peter. So again, this is Galatians 2:11 through 14. But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face, because he stood condemned. For before certain men came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he drew back and separated himself, fearing the circumcision party. And the rest of the Jews acted hypocritically along with him, so that even Barnabas was led astray by their hypocrisy. But when I saw that their conduct was not in step with the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas before them all, if you, though a Jew, live like a Gentile and not like a Jew, how can you force Gentiles to live like Jews? So the big idea is when we change based on who's watching, we sacrifice authenticity, integrity, our standards. And Paul's confrontation of Peter reminds us that true character is revealed when our actions consistently align with our beliefs. It's not always easy. It's very difficult. Even if you take away the importance of following the gospel, think about when you're trying to eat right and then you hang out with people who are eating junk food. How difficult is that? For me, it's really tough. All of this subject matter is very difficult to me, because not only is it, I'm a people pleaser. And so you have a tendency when you're a people pleaser to flow where the wind blows, which is not a good place to be. Now, it seems as if you are making life easier by going with the flow. The challenge, though, is when you start to go against your integrity and people see you and they watch you and you're one way with one group and one way with another group, then they're like, well, wait a minute, that's not consistent. People reward consistency. Doesn't mean that everybody's going to like you, because even if you try to make everybody like you, they're still not going to like you. So hold fast, be true to who you are. Okay, so the opening question, have you ever acted differently around certain groups of people? Yes. Have you ever hidden part of yourself because you were worried about what others would think? Yes. And these are challenging, broad questions that you need to ask yourself. And then when you answer, because everybody answers yes to these. I don't care who you are. You can at some point in your life answer yes to both of these. And then find out what is the situation and then why. For me, lack of self-confidence, poor self-image, thinking that if I sway and I do what I think that they want me to do, then they're going to like me. So, and then I'm going to feel good about myself. When in turn, when you start to challenge your integrity, you don't feel very good about yourself. At least I didn't. So our conversation today is about authenticity. So authenticity as a modern buzzword, but biblical authenticity is the courage to live consistently with your convictions, regardless who's in the room. And I like that because Josh Wells we were talking on our episode way back when, and a lot of people say integrity is doing the right thing when no one's looking. And I liked what he challenged me with. It's also doing the right thing when everybody is looking. a lot of times that's more difficult than when you're alone by yourself. And if you're just at home, and we'll use again diet as an example, because everyone can relate to that, is it's pretty easy to hold true, stand fast, and be able to say, okay, I'm going to not eat these cookies. But what if you go out and there's cookies everywhere and people are eating them and you're watching their face because they're like, oh, these things are so amazing? That's when it really becomes difficult to hold fast. So in Galatians 2, we're seeing a surprising moment where Paul publicly confronts Peter. And so Peter, again, is he walked alongside Jesus. He walked on the water. So he was a prime example to everyone. But even when you look at him as a person throughout the Bible, he was challenged a lot by what other people thought of him. Think about when Jesus was being crucified, he denied him 3 times. And it was actually before. And he was like, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And sure enough, he did. And it was because he was afraid of what others would think. He was afraid of where things would go. But he did grow from that, because we know that he was killed for his faith, and there was challenges that he faced. But even those who are strong, as an example, are human, and they have faults that they're having to overcome. So what was happening? So let's give the context. We read the scripture. Let's look at the context. So Peter had been freely eating and fellowshipping with Gentile believers, which again, in the Bible, if you have Jews and Gentiles, they did not mix. But here he is eating with the Gentiles, having no problem, because Jesus's commandment was go teach all nations. The main focus was to win over the Gentiles first, because they weren't challenged as much with all the tradition that the Jewish people had as well. And then he also understood that salvation came through faith, not through Jewish customs. But when certain Jewish leaders arrived, Peter changed his behavior. How familiar does that sound in your life? If somebody shows up, do you change? Do you all of a sudden put on a mask that you want that person to see versus what the other people see? And that was most of my life, being completely transparent. And I still am challenged from time to time. The beauty of age is not caring. It's like the older you get each year, you just care a little less about what others think, because you understand the lack of importance that carries. So he withdrew from the Gentiles because he feared criticism. So Peter knew the truth but acted differently because of social pressure. How often do people know what is right but choose acceptance over conviction? That's huge. And you see it all through society today. I'm not going to say the phrase now more than ever, because it's been throughout history where people choose acceptance over conviction. This was thousands of years ago, and he's doing the same thing we do today. How often do we sway the message that we may want to put out on social media because we're worried about the criticism that it's going to bring? And then when you put something out and then you're surprised when you receive criticism, just put it out there. You can't control how other people respond to what you put out. You only have control over what you put out and how you put it out. So just understand that criticism is going to come no matter what. You can be as perfect can be, and somebody's going to nitpick and find something wrong. So Peter's problem wasn't ignorance. So this is the cost of living for approval. He didn't lack knowledge. He lacked consistency. We've talked about this on other episodes, that consistency is the key in life. You need to be consistent. You need to understand where you're headed and then point yourself in that direction and work towards that goal. And you can't have consistency if you don't have a plan, if you haven't thought things through. Think about your day. Again, we've used these examples before. Think about going on a trip. If you know where your destination is and you have Waze, or if you have a map, you know that you need to consistently follow the path to reach your destination. If you go forward and then turn around for 2 hours and then go over west and you're headed north and you're just not going to get there. But if you consistently drive north, if you consistently walk north, you will get to where you want to go, if north is where you want to go. So a lot of it just matters how fast you get there, but consistency, always moving forward. And the other thing, just to add to that, not that it's a surprise, but if you're not moving forward, you're regressing. So there's no consistency if you're stagnant. So 3 signs that you're living for approval. Your behavior changes depending on the audience. One version of you at church, another at work, another with friends. That's very prevalent. That was me. When you look at all 3 of those, it was really, I'm just 100% guilty of this, is that you put this portrayal out because you want to be accepted. Your genuine self is in there somewhere. Your character's in there somewhere. But the fact that you're willing and able to weave in and out makes you dangerous. Makes you dangerous to yourself because you're not being consistent to the beliefs that you have. And my problem with consistency was I never set my flag into something. I said that these things were important, but I didn't sit down and say, these are really important to me and these are my non-negotiables and that's where I'm going to go. Now in business, I would do that. I was like, okay, these are my non-negotiables as a manager. And we all knew it was easy to communicate, easy to follow, no issues, no wavering. I was consistent. But there's so many other more important things. And when you turn in your expense report that I wasn't consistent on, I wavered. I did not have my true north set in stone, but now I do. And once you do that, everything else falls in line. And for me, it's following Christ. It's having that non-negotiable that I'm going to stand firm on my faith, regardless of what it may cost me. Because ultimately, the cost here on earth is far less than what my cost of eternity would be. So, fear drives your decisions. Again, that was one of my big things: fear of rejection, criticism, not fitting in. And the pressure of not fitting in is even stronger now because of social media, because of the visibility that everybody has about everybody's life. And once you see a trend, everybody wants to fit in. Again, that's always happened because we had haircuts, popular haircuts, popular clothes, that when I was growing up and we didn't have social media. So it gets out. It just now it's much, much quicker. And so the fitting in is in a much, stronger vacuum, at least in my opinion. As you compromise small things to avoid conflict, Peter didn't deny the gospel verbally, but his actions contradicted it. So how often do you have something set in stone and you believe it in your heart, but your little actions don't align properly with what needs to happen? So being one person with coaches, teachers, teammates, you need to be the same person. You need to make that decision of who you want to be and then stick to it. Pretending to be someone you're not to gain acceptance, are you still doing that? I did it when I was younger. I still have moments where I will do it now. But people respect consistency. People respect people who stand for their values. They may not agree. The media portrays is that if you are standing firm on your values and your standards and it's opposite of someone else, then you're evil. And it's only opposite of what they believe. But do you think the same thing? If you see someone who thinks and believes the complete opposite politically than you, what do you think? I get frustrated sometimes when I hear people share what their thoughts are, but their thoughts are their thoughts. They don't have to be right, but they're still their thoughts. So it's important for me, what's helped me go this route is have an open mind, but be firm in who I believe I am and who I know I am and what I focus on. So why Paul confronted Peter? So this is, to me, it's a sign of true friendship, because confrontation when someone's doing wrong is important. And the way you do it is also important as well. So Paul saw a bigger issue. This wasn't merely about eating together, it was about integrity. So when your actions contradict your beliefs, people become confused about what you truly stand for. And so if you waver, how can they trust you? How can they believe in what you say if you don't walk the talk? You can't just talk it, you've got to walk it. And again, people will follow people who are convicted in what they believe in, good and bad. So looking at history, Hitler was convicted for his beliefs. He believed it. He was passionate about it. It was terribly wrong. But through his conviction and his charisma, he had a whole country follow him. More importantly, he had the right people with power following him, which then oppressed the whole country. And then we cast this broad stroke that the whole country was evil when it was only a certain few. So when your actions contradict your beliefs, people become confused. We talked about that. Influence is built on consistency. We talked about that. The most respected leaders don't change with the crowd, don't adjust their values for convenience, and don't wear masks to gain approval. Your credibility is found in the gap between what you say and what you do. And it's important. And one thing that I've seen recently is the leadership and the credibility that my daughter has, that in the face of being challenged by a large number of people, she stood up for what she believed in, and she stood up for a friend who was doing what was right. But it was a challenge. It was difficult for her to do that. And there's been issues. And I'm really proud of who she is and how she handled that. That's leadership. That's also resilience, grit, and integrity. So she's awesome. Segment 4. So being true to yourself versus being true to Christ. So important distinction. The world says be true to yourself. So be careful about these messages, because it's one of those things that when you hear be true to yourself, that means you're putting yourself in the position of God. The Bible says be true to who God created you to be. Biblical authenticity isn't doing whatever feels right. Feeling right is an emotion. It's aligning your life with your God-given identity and convictions. So that means you got to get in the Bible. You got to know what you're supposed to be doing to know the direction you're going to go in. So, questions to ask yourself. Who am I when nobody is watching? What values do I refuse to compromise? Am I changing my behavior to gain acceptance? Would my closest friends describe me as consistent? So, lessons. Courage over comfort. So Peter chose comfort. Paul chose courage. Consistency creates trust. People trust what is predictable. Your actions teach more than your words. Others are always watching how you live. There's more caught than taught. That's so true as a parent. It's true as a human as well. People are always watching. So you have to understand that your audience is everywhere. You may not even recognize who's watching, but somebody somewhere is watching. And then authentic leaders don't need multiple versions of themselves. The strongest leaders are the same person at home, on the field, in the classroom, online, at work, wherever you're, the grocery store, whatever. Be who you are and who God designed you to be. So this week, identify one area you're tempted to become a different version of yourself depending on the crowd. Ask, what am I afraid of? What conviction am I compromising? And what would consistency look like? So the final takeaway, Peter's mistake wasn't that he lacked faith. It was that he allowed fear of people to outweigh his conviction. Authenticity is not being whoever you feel like being in the moment. Authenticity is having courage to be the same person, guided by your values and faith, no matter who's watching. So live in line with what you truly believe. I hope this message today was something that you needed to hear. I had seen that Bible verse in a devotion that I was doing the other day, and it just was one that I wanted to be able to share, because in this world today, we are being challenged every single moment to be somebody different, to fit in, to go with the flow because it's easier. And this cancel culture is difficult. It's dangerous. So know your North Star, know where your true north is, and keep consistent on your pathway to greatness. I'm Jeff Forster.